Good evening and welcome once again to Insight Live. And as usual, we have very interesting and challenging topics. And tonight the topic is the gospel in sports. And you might say, well, Kurt is going too far. Why? There can't be the gospel in sports. But if you look at the Apostle Paul, by the way, the gospel means, the good news. And the Apostle Paul talks about boxing. He talks about the Olympic crowds cheering us on. He talks about wrestling. He talks about running. And he uses all of these metaphors to encourage us, with the good news of Jesus. Even Jesus endured the cross for the joy set before him. And the backdrop of that was the cheering crowds in the Olympics and the race. And he did that for the joy set before him. So there's a lot of metaphors, and we want to ask you something tonight, okay? Like if I said, what's your favorite sport? What sport do you play right now? And then you'll say to me, well, Kurt, I'm 85 years old. I don't play any sports, but what was your favorite sport as a youngster? And what did you learn from that sport that you can apply to your Christian life today?
Well, that's a very warm welcome from me. Love Tuesday evenings, love looking at what people are doing with their lives and getting the interaction with you. So tonight we have John Horry, who is a Christian author, and he's written this book called The Gospel in Golf. And these are reflections on life while playing a round of golf. So I'm sure you are going to be completely intrigued. But of course, we're going to take it a lot wider than just golf. And Kurt has prepared a few things. But Kurt, I just wanted to kind of discuss with our viewers about my early childhood.
Yeah, what was your favorite sport?
So it's not a favorite one. It was just one that was a family one. And it was playing tennis. So we played tennis I suppose when we moved from Kenya to Zimbabwe, my dad and mum bought a house and it had a derelict tennis court. So we renovated it and ourselves, and it was like we just did so much work. We put the lines down. It was a murram court or a dirt court. So we had to bag and salt it and water it. And it was like so much work. But the fun thing was that we got into this kind of routine where we'd wake up at 5:30 in the morning and have a good set of tennis before we went to school. And we'd have to cycle 3 miles to school as well. So it was lovely. And I was trained by Don Black and his kids, Karen and I think, not Byron, Karen and the other one. Anyway, the two of them are the doubles, top 100 doubles. So Don Black was was also a Wimbledon, competitor, and he had a beautiful avocado farm with lychees there, and I used to go and play on his beautiful grass courts, and I played his boy Byron, actually, was the oldest boy, and it was so demeaning because he had this cut-off racket and he was this short and I was 17 or 18, and he would always, if I was beating him, I'd feel so sad because he'd start crying, so I'd let him win. But we love that, we love that.
So what did you learn? I mean, what did you, what did you learn from that?
I learned about my character. I learned, because my father would always say to me, Melanie, get the killer instinct. And I realized that I'm not a person who will trample on people or go and grab something at the expense of somebody else. So I'm full of empathy and compassion. So I'm not the kind of person you want as a partner for tennis, because I'm not going to go, there, we've got it, we've won. I'm kind of not like that. I love the sociability of it. So I learned about my character. I also learned about discipline, getting up, fruitfulness of trying and trying again, repetition, teaching myself, memory skills, as far as just doing, practicing those sweeping moves in the right way. So yeah, it was a lot of discipline, just understanding that actually when you do work, you can reap from that.
It's amazing, Paul writes to Timothy and he says, train yourself to be godliness, as in a sports training. Okay, train yourself to be godly. For physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for all things, holding promise for both the present life and the life to come. So it's almost like, Paul saying, hey, just as an athlete really works hard. I think it was my sister's ex-boyfriend was a rower, and he was training for the Olympics, and he had to get up at 4:30 every morning, and the training was just brutal. And eventually he pulled out because he couldn't do it. And I loved American football. When you're a little boy, you get your first football, you get your little uniform and your helmet, and you actually sleep with it. Just like our son did when he got the baseball, you just like it so much. And we're watching the Oakland Raiders and so on, and I liked their help, so I got a little Oakland Raiders helmet, and I would beg my dad to play football. But I remember one time I was in a summer camp, just brutal training, and the coach was called Skip. Typical American name. Hey, Skip, huge guy. And he would say, Kettner, my last name, Kettner, go out for a pass. So I'd go out for a pass. And he, on purpose, just threw what we call like a bullet. The ball would go so hard into my solar plexus, knock the wind out of me. And I would have to get up and repeat the experience, but learn to catch it better. And you learn endurance. You learn that you're more resilient than you think you are. And you can't cry. I felt like crying, but if I cried, that would be even worse, because the 12 other boys with me would tease me without mercy if I showed any weakness. So you can't really share your emotions that much. You just gotta get up and do it. And it reminds me, Jesus endured the cross for the joy set before him, and it certainly taught me resilience and endurance that I'm still applying to my life right now.
I think one of the other things, because I played netball and basketball, is working with a team, getting on with people and working with a team. And I think, scripturally we see, I've been watching The Chosen. I don't know whether you've been seeing The Chosen, but you see, the dynamics between, the various disciples, how there's a little bit of tension or whatever the case is. And that's normal. It's, that's the human condition, isn't it? But I think when you're on a team, you realize that you're going for one goal. You're going towards winning. And I think, when we just look at our lives as Christians, Kurt and I often have to say to people, don't criticize somebody else's ministry, don't criticize somebody else's church, because that's part of us, that's part of the body of Christ. And so we have to be very careful with that, because if we're going to be heading towards the goal together, and we are longing for Jesus to come back, and we are doing the work of the gospel, I think we have to be very careful not to be shooting our own players, because you can't win when your players are down.
Well, really, I mean, we can't really spend our time criticizing other people. I love Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 24, and this is a message. This is from the Message version, and he just really gets the gist of it. And he says, "I don't know about you, but I'm running hard for the finish line. I'm giving it everything I've got. No sloppy living for me. I'm staying alert, and I'm staying in top condition. I'm not going to get caught napping, telling everyone else all about it, and then missing out myself." Just like Melody is saying, we're so concentrating on other people where there's no sloppy living for us. We have to train hard like an athlete. You could just see Paul. Obviously, Paul played sports as a boy. Obviously, he liked sports. Obviously, because he uses all of these metaphors, but he's applying perhaps what he learned as a boy from his favorite sport or his sports to his present Christian life, and encouraging us as well. So if you're watching tonight, please, just a short email, what was your favorite sport, or what sport did you play as a boy or a girl when you were small, and what did you learn from it that has value for your Christian life now?
Well, we already have one of our viewers. Always, Chandra Kumar, always writes in first, and he said, Kurt, Melanie, I was trained in martial arts and combined with sports science and qualified in fitness instructor. I used it for good, of course, by teaching people how to defend themselves from danger in the environment they live. Now I am doing mission. And then that was his title. You always do a title. Then I could, Melanie, having a supernatural cross-examination on Insight Live on Revelation TV all around the world to save souls and make miracles happen supernaturally. What the driving force behind writing the gospel in golf, and does it relate to the triune God? Jesus Christ. I love Insight Live on Revelation TV. God bless Revelation TV. Well, Chandra Kumar, you're going to hear a lot more when we have John talking to us about his book and his journey with the gospel and golf. So who else do we have?
Does it relate to the, I'll take a try at that. You have the golfer, you have the caddy. So the golfer is the father, the caddy is, I don't know. I give
Holy
that's very loose.
Okay, let's see. We've got here athletics, running reminds me that Christian life is not a sprint. It requires stamina, spiritual and physical, more like a marathon. And that is Les. Yes, Les. I think sometimes we are sprinting ahead and we're actually going ahead of God. I was speaking to somebody the other day and saying, do you know that God is outside of time? And sometimes we have to measure ourselves in a way that God has time to be able to interact with us in the various stages of our lives and even our week or day. So it's an interesting thing to give God time to interact with us.
Yeah. Any more?
Yeah, we do. We'll carry on reading a little later.
Well, we're going to go across the pond to my country, the US of A, and we're going to see about the gospel in golf on the other side of the pond and what people, Christian golfers, are doing and how they're getting the message of Jesus out through the golf game. Enjoy it.
David Cook wrote a bestseller about a fictional golfer meeting God that led to the movie 7 Days in Utopia. Now the book, Golf's Sacred Journey, has helped kick off a movement of Christians using its message to help real-life golfers encounter Christ. A staggering number have written to a Cook website to tell him about their conversions.
I have asked Jesus to become the Lord of my life. 10,000. We had 69 last month, 129 the month before, and this is 2 years after the movie.
Much of this has come about because Christian golfers have realized just what a good evangelistic tool is Golf's Sacred Journey, now joined by its sequel, Johnny's U.S. Open.
Jim Seacrest of Augusta, Georgia, has given out about 500 books. He orders them 100 at a time and says others are doing the same.
People were buying the books 10, giving them away, buying them 100 and giving them away.
80,000 of the first 100,000 books went out in packs of 10, and that's what we call the Johnny Project.
Johnny is the golf guru in Cook's books, who not only revolutionizes golfers' play, but points them to eternity. So who exactly buys these bundles of books?
It's a guy that says, I want to be a Johnny. I want to make a difference in other people's life.
And it's not just guys. Augusta's Madeline Turner figures she's given away 50 so far.
I've got 2 in my bag. I've got 2 in my car. And when I start running low, I get the shakes. It's like...
Turner's friend Tom Sorrells has passed out about 40. He doesn't present the book as religious or Christian, but as something very helpful.
This little light book may show you how to find rhythm and balance in your life.
Pastor David McKinley pushed golfers in his church to go even further and start an actual golf ministry, since they were less than 2 miles from Augusta National, home of the Masters.
It is a place that is known around the world, and so I realized we had an international platform in Augusta.
Seacrest agreed to head up the new ministry, Warren Golf Augusta. His friend David Cook insisted they use that last word.
He said, Augusta is the name that will draw people to you from all over the world. One day, because of Warren Goff, Augusta will be known for the master versus the masters.
And this group has made itself the home and heart of the Johnny Project, that spontaneous movement that began using Cook's books to reach the lost on the links.
What a wonderful way to share the love of Christ and to be able to change somebody's life.
Carson McDaniel saw this power up close in the life of Tracy, a friend he'd been praying for a long time.
And I just have a tremendous respect for this guy in my life because he was my mentor and he got me in the brokerage business.
Then one day they were golfing in Oklahoma.
We were on the 3rd green and Tracy came to me and said, Carson, he said, I need to tell you something. And I said, what's that? And he said, I gave my life to the Lord. And on a 100-degree day in Oklahoma, it really gave me chills.
Tracy told McDaniel it was because of Golf's Sacred Journey, and McDaniel became a Johnny Project all by himself.
I ended up ordering probably 150 or 200 books.
Johnny Project groups are now starting to form around the country, and Warren Golf Augusta recently held a national retreat featuring Cook to see about ways to step all this up a notch. Because they all realize many golfers will never go into a church to find God, so Christians need to take God out to the golf courses.
It really is a very relaxed opportunity to have natural conversation with people and for long periods of time.
What better way to find out where a man is or a woman is in their life, and are they having any trials and tribulations?
You know, you feel His presence. It's such a peaceful, quiet environment.
So you can share your life, you can share your testimony, you can build a relationship.
Ecclesiastes says that God has planted eternity in the heart of every man.
Many just need someone, like maybe a fellow golfer, to show them how to reach it. Paul Strand, CBN News, Augusta.
So there you go, the gospel in golf. Now do you believe me? Because I don't play golf. I know a lot of people don't play golf, but it's so amazing that this guy's written a book and it's affecting so many people. And when we come over to John, we'll see what he's doing in the UK. Melanie,
I think one of the things that really impressed me is that they looked strategically at where they were, being where the Masters is, using that name and starting a ministry like that. And I think, sometimes we just think it's all going to happen, but I think that God gives us, He gives us wisdom and understanding about, where we are, like where we are now in southern Spain. It's like an airport, people coming and going, and the ability to be able to share and quickly share the gospel and be praying for people as they come, that they would see the kingdom of God. I think it's so exciting. Well, we have Dylan. Hi, Dylan. Blowing you a kiss. Lovely to have you join us on Insight Live tonight. And yes, I'm just going to read the last part of your email, which is about a question for Kurt about boxing, because remember, we have spoken about having a boxing gym, in the annex of our church in San Diego, in the inner city. And so we had people training the young people, and they were running and just really overdoing it. Like I wouldn't even be able to even do as much running as they did. But it was good discipline, and it was getting them off the streets, out of the gangs, etc. But Dylan has a question for you, Kurt. He says, was it in the worldwide famous Kronk boxing gym that you learned to box? Love to you both, Dylan from Northern Ireland. So,
well, I would love to invent a story right now and just, but we did. We have interviewed boxers. And
yes.
Even in our church one time, you were doing Sunday school,
yes.
and we had Tyson Fury and
that's right.
other boxers visited our church and here, so we're very familiar with that. And I remember, I don't think it was Tyson that came in, it was another guy, Jimmy Tibbetts, a coach with all of these kind of famous boxers that I didn't know. And they came a little late into the service, all these guys with that tattoos and so on. and they just come in and take up a whole row of seats. And I just stopped the sermon. I almost had tears in my eyes. And I said, guys, it is so wonderful to see boxers in church. And I told them the story about when we were in San Diego in the inner city. We had a boxing coach come in, and we had a Golden Gloves program, and he just cleaned up the area. He took on these kids who were angry, had
wonderful.
no fathers, on drugs and gangs and violent, and just took them and made, from sinner to saint almost. It was amazing. And we traveled. One time we traveled to South Africa, and our little church team took on
to Southwest Africa. To
South Africa.
But
to South
yes.
Africa. We boxed the Southwest African team.
Right,
okay,
yes.
the Namibian team. We beat them. We beat the Cape Town provincial team, but then we took on the national South African team. So they all flew down from South Africa and to this facility in a township, Melanie, that was designed for their bid in the Olympics. And so people said, there's no way you'll even remotely beat the national team. So what happened is we were in the middle of the boxing match, the lights went out, and they went on. The lights went out again. So the admiral, who was the secretary of the Golden Gloves of the team, he was just driving out his car. So our coach, Coach Coons, runs out and says, I have the faith. The lights are going to come on again. And then the lights did come on again. We finished at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
It was the best fight. We didn't win, but we almost did. It was almost a tie. It was the best fight that anybody had ever seen. And then at 2 o'clock in the morning, we went to the local police station and had what they call a braai, a big barbecue. And
but
just
faith,
the presence of God in there.
Faith was released
Oh.
So it's just
So
beautiful.
just through that, you learn about things, and that's why that's the author of Hebrews says, look, go for it. You have such a crowd of witnesses. You can't see them, but they're cheering you on. Run the race. And I certainly learned something from that time.
Well, so Dylan, just to answer your question, Kurt is not a boxer. And I'm quite glad about that. We never box in our family. We try to talk intelligibly to each other and argue in that way. But thank you for writing in. Also, for those of you who may have joined us later, we are talking about athletics and the gospel, but specifically golf and the gospel, because we are going to be joined by John Horry. Is that the Horry? Yes, the gospel in golf. Just in a minute, but I do want to encourage you. Do write in. Let us know what your favourite sport was and how it affected you, how you enjoyed it, and actually how it perhaps the things you learnt, the lessons you learnt. So do write in and let us know. We're having a great chatty time here on Insight Live today, but we are going to get to nitty-gritty with John Horry just now.
Okay, so if you're a viewer, please, just for the sake of having a good program, write in. What was your favorite sport as a child? What did you learn from it that you can apply to your Christian character today? And we're going to go to John Horry right now. He's at home. He's not on the golf course. He's not live on the golf course. He's at home, and he's going to say hi to us right now. Hi, John.
Hello. Pleased to be here. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
We are so delighted to have you, John. We want to just welcome you on behalf of all the viewers that are watching tonight, and just say it really is a privilege to have you on Revelation TV, and with this extraordinary kind of practical type of book. People say, oh, it's just sports, we've got to stick to the gospel, but I think what people don't realize is that God uses everyday things to explain the gospel, to show his love and to show his miraculous work. So we want to ask you the first question, at least I do. Let's just hear a little bit about your love for the sport and perhaps how it started.
Golf. Well, I mean, you've built me up quite nicely here, but I love golf, but I'm not very good at it. I've got to say, people on that video, some of those golf swings, I can only dream of having a golf swing like that. I really started playing golf. I used to travel a lot to Thailand, and I worked out in Thailand for a while, and there was a golf course there, and a colleague of mine was playing golf, and I'd never played golf at all. But he took me to this small 9-hole course, which was 9 holes, which was a series of islands round a lagoon. I spent most of the time just bashing the ball into the water. But the beauty about this 9-hole course was you went round twice. And we played the first round at 5 p.m. And if you know Thailand, if you know about being somewhere near the equator, come 6 o'clock, it goes dark. It just, it's like someone turns the light out. And we went round it a second time when it was floodlit. And it's the only time I've played floodlit golf, but it was like you were playing a different course. And then, of course, the real fun of it was after we'd been around the course a couple of times, we went to an excellent restaurant and had a great time chatting over what could have happened on the golf course. Usually I lost more balls than I cared to imagine. But that's what got me playing. I was pretty hopeless then. Well, I'm still pretty hopeless now, but I think maybe I've got a little better. And then I suppose when I was younger, I used to play racket sports. I used to play squash a lot, and badminton a bit. But I couldn't help reflecting on your character, Melanie, when you were saying you were all compassionate and you couldn't bear to beat somebody. Squash, if people know squash is all about grinding your opponent into the ground. It's the person who can still walk that wins generally. Whereas golf is not like that. It really isn't. It's the competition between us as we play around is gentle, certainly at our level of golf. It's much more a fellowship. I call our happy bunch in the book the Fellowship of the Four. It's much more about encouraging one another. I often say if I lose, as it were, and I've had a good round, but my compatriots have done better, I'm happier than if I win and we've all had a bad round. It really is very much us against the course, and we are willing one another on. We want the drives to go straight, and we want the putts to drop. It's how it is. So it's a sport that you can play, and you can be compassionate to each other, because the competition is secondary, really, to the event. In that sense, it's not a sport. It's more of a cultural event, I like to think. So that's how I started. I started in Thailand, and then had some good friends who were playing back here in the UK. And while I was working, I played, I don't know, once or twice a month. But now I'm retired. Hooray!
Hooray.
I can play much more often. In fact, this week, I'll whisper this because my wife might hear from the other room. I'm playing 4 times this week.
So say if I was your pastor, okay, the church you go to, you're in and around Nottingham, I know that, and I'm your pastor, and I said, John, I want you to preach next month, and the title of your message is going to be The Gospel in Golf, and you have 20 minutes. Okay, you don't have 20 minutes now, but kind of what kind of points? What would your 3 or 4 points be? I mean, if you were preaching, quote unquote, on the gospel in golf.
Okay, 3 or 4 points. Well, when I do preach, I like to alliterate. I'm not sure I can pull out an alliterated sermon off the cuff like that. I think number 1 point would be something about enjoy the journey. It's got to be something about the whole setup of a golf course. You're there for 18 holes. Some things will go right, some things will go wrong, but you're with each other. And, you know, if you draw the analogy to life, we have the coach and caddy called Jesus to walk with us. And I guess we learn more about him when things go wrong than when they're going right. And too often in life, we spend our time thinking, I've got to get through this.
Wow.
I've got to get through this. Really, we ought to stand back and just be aware of God, be aware of our situation, and enjoy the journey, because every step of that journey has been planned for you. You know, we're told in Ephesians, aren't we, that God's prepared good works in advance for us to do. So enjoy it, live in that joy of it. It's not a euphoria, is it? It's the other Greek word is euthymē, which means a deep down contentment, the deep down peace. So I think point 1 would be something about enjoy the journey.
So can we just interact on that? Because I really loved what you said about that, John, and I just think that maybe some of our viewers would like to kind of just slow down and think, you know, about the parallels of their life. And I was just thinking, you said that you've got a certain amount of people that you're walking, you know, obviously on the golf course with, and obviously you have to get on with them, and, you know, you learn about your own character as well. And I think that's the same thing with life. You know, God puts people in our lives, and sometimes we look at them and we think they've got the issue, but actually when we really point back to ourselves, we see that actually we've got the attitude because the way that we are analyzing and looking or criticizing. So I love that with the analogy of like going on the golf course, and the
caddy is Jesus.
Yes.
And he said you can learn more from your mistakes than just kind of going on.
Exactly. And there's a certain time limit. You know, when you're playing golf, you know, you've got the 18 holes or whatever. But in life, we have, you know, the 10, or if God gives you more years, you've got those. And it's almost as though sometimes we neglect to think that actually time is short. And, you know, sweating the small stuff and, you know, being a critical, negative person, you know, we don't have time to be that. You know, if we really want to follow the Master, who is Jesus, full of compassion, full of love, doing good works, healing people, bringing encouragement wherever he goes, you know, and the scripture says we should speak the very words of God. So I could just have this picture in my mind of the parallels of the golf course, the beautiful green, and then us just taking time in life to actually enjoy the journey. Thank you for that. I love that. So let's hear the second point.
Okay, so enjoy the journey is the first point, and then as you're on this journey, I mean, I'd just build on what you've said. I mean, I can only really say amen to that. This idea of encouraging one another, it's so easy to destroy one another.
Wow.
And I guess we've seen this in the Christian walk so often, don't we? We all want to do a good job and we want things to go right, but it's we're so good at criticising each other and pulling up the. I used to do the notices. This is a silly illustration, but when I was a young man, I used to type the notices at church, and it took me a long time, and I spent a lot of time doing it. But generally, the comment I would get from somebody is, "You've misspelt one word in the second." And that sort of thing happens a lot. And rather than saying, John, I realise you're a busy bloke. I'm talking about when I was about 22, 23. Really, thank you for doing a fine set of notices. They're a real blessing to me. That would have been great, wouldn't it? But very often people want to just pick on the one or two things that are wrong, rather than just telling you what a good job you've done in life. So around the golf course, I do play with my pastor. My pastor is a guy called Jason, and he plays with us. He's an incredible golfer. He's got this ability to hit the ball in circles. I've never seen anybody hit balls in circles, but Jason did. On one occasion, he on his backswing, he hit his golf trolley, and the whole thing just smashed into bits. He's quite a character, Jason. But he says in his foreword to this book, I'm constantly encouraging him, and that's what I'm trying to do, both in his ministry and in his golf. And it's easier in his ministry, I've got to say, in his golf to encourage him.
So maybe he's safe. Maybe he's safer behind the pulpit than on the golf course.
Well, don't be offended if I say he's better behind the pulpit than he is behind the golf. But it's, in all these things, I think the message really is to everybody. I don't know how many people are watching tonight, but take time to encourage one another and just say to one another, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're sharing this moment of my life with me, and we're here together with God. And that's, as we go out on a golf course, I often say, even when I bash the ball into the lake, what could be better than this? To be walking around the golf course in fellowship with other people, sharing and talking from all sorts of things, from the sublime to ridiculous, but we're there as God's creatures, enjoying God's creation, and we're doing that together. And that is such a strong link to the Christian life. Whatever we're doing in the Christian life, we're God's creatures, dearly loved of him, special of him, we're precious to him, and we're doing those things that he has prepared in advance for us to do. So as we walk the life together in fellowship, enjoy the journey, encourage one another. There you are. I've got alliteration there, haven't I? Enjoy the journey, enjoy, encourage.
Okay.
Now I'm desperately trying to think of the third one.
No, I'm going to stop you right there, because I have a couple of comments again, because I had this vision of a whole bunch of people, that you were with, say, playing golf, and each one is dressed differently, and each one walks with their own type of gait, some perhaps with the pigeon toe, or another one with a bit of a swank or whatever. And isn't that just like life, I think sometimes we want people to be how we want them to be. But actually, if we can look from far and appreciate their idiosyncrasies and, who they truly are and how they were created, even if things have gone wrong, you've got high eyebrows, low eyebrows, big cheeks, or whatever the case is, that we can actually enjoy our differences and not try and control the situation. I just love this point too as well, because it's about encouragement, and you can break that down into so many things about just seeing the beauty in each of us being completely different. So thank you for number 2. Have you got number 3 yet?
Yeah.
Yes, before we leave number 2 though, we all do dress differently, and if you read the book, one of my mates I play with called Phil, and on the day that I kind of thought about writing this book, he was wearing this incredible pink ensemble. I thought everything about him was pink, and he was even playing with a pink ball and a pink tee. So I don't think I've seen anyone ever do that. I did want to get a photograph of him in his pink ensemble for the book, but his wife assured me that she has burnt the clothes, so I couldn't do that. But yes, we're all very different, and everyone on the golf course, we all come to that with the baggage from life. We're all very different, but we're all there for a purpose, which is probably going to be my third point of this sermon, which I think is something about the end game. So I'm trying to alliterate, you see, the EN, end game. There is a plan, there is a purpose. When you're playing golf, you've got 18 holes to play, and you're trying to get round those holes and you're trying to get to the clubhouse. And in the clubhouse, we enjoy a nice pot of tea and a breakfast bap. You know what a breakfast bap is?
Yes.
A bit of bread with bacon and egg in it. It's lovely.
Nice.
But there's, within God's plans and God's purposes for our life, it is not random. It's not hopeless. It's not devoid of meaning. And that verse that you talked about, Kurt, for the joy set before him, Christ endured the cross, Hebrews 11:4, somewhere around there. The joy before him was he knew that what he was doing was part of God's plan of salvation.
Yeah.
And because of what he did on the cross, there's hope and life for us all. The natural law of sin of death is reversed and we've got love and life. I mean, it's fantastic. And the end game of golf, there's a purpose to it. We're trying to get round in the lowest score possible. And we end up in the clubhouse. There's a purpose to it. We've earned our cup of tea. And the Christian life, we fix on that goal. I think you quoted Philippians 3:13, didn't you? Press on towards the goal, never give up, keep on going. And I suppose as part of that, a sub-point, I would certainly say to people of my age, certainly golfing men of my age, Christian golfing men of my age, is there's no such thing as retirement in God's kingdom. If you're here, if you're on this earth, God's kept you here for a purpose. I used to say that to my mother-in-law actually when we had children, and I said the only reason that when we had young children, I used to say the only reason God's allowed you to live so long is so you can help me out looking after the children.
Speaking of your children, have you ever had like a family golf day where everybody?
With my eldest Matt, he did play, or he has tried to play. He has hacked up the odd fairway, I think it's fair to say. He's okay. I've tried to play with Isaac, my younger lad. We haven't played since he's grown up. I think probably early teens we last played. He very famously he swung over the ball and then came back, swung backwards and caught the ball on the backstroke. Oh. So he actually knocked the ball backwards about 7 yards. It was a beautiful shot in reverse. If he'd turned round, it would have been a great shot. It would have been straight down the fairway. But no, we've never managed a family golf day yet. But maybe as they get older and get a bit more time. I do mention in the book, you're talking about someone who's 85. I think you're saying your viewers might be 85 and saying what you're saying with play sport. Well, at the golf course I play at, there's a guy who is in his 80s. He's out there 2 or 3 times a week playing, a great guy. And he shares a story. He said it a few times. He plays with his son and grandsons, and he's very proud to say he loses. And I think that's a wonderful, it's a blessing of where we live in the West. I know, but how has God blessed this generation? I can't think there's been any other generation in the whole history of mankind on this earth where grandfathers can play a game like golf with grandsons. Wow. We are so blessed in the physical realm in the Western world, and I'm sure. God is doing amazing things through us already, but I'm sure there's so much more that we could be doing and should be doing as His people here on earth.
That's great, Melanie.
Well, we do have a viewer, Dory, she's a wonderful, reliable viewer. Thank you, Dory, for writing in. And she says, "Hi, folks. I used to play golf, mostly in Scotland. Then tennis, badminton, squash, rock climbing." Wow, Dory, you've been doing a bunch of things.
But there's a book. It's called Dory the Explorer. Dora, I don't know, or is it?
And then she says, nowadays it's soft tennis. What is soft tennis? I don't know what soft tennis is. And I had to go at walking football with all the men. Well, good for you. Good fun. Don't know about learning Christian values, but learnt the killer instinct. LOL. Love, Dory. Well, good for you, girl. Oh, that's good. I love that. I love that when our viewers write in. So, wow, what a cross-section of sports. Actually, our son when he was very young. I think he did everything. He did, all the American ones, the football, the baseball,
basketball.
I think he did the basketball, he did ice hockey, all those things. But actually, concerning golf, what was very helpful when he was recovering from leukemia is we would go to the practice.
The driving range.
Driving
yes.
range, and he was able to, strike a few balls, and it just made him feel alive again and feel like he was.
But he was pretty
becoming,
good at it, and he videoed me trying to hit it. And I'm a terrible golfer, and I just like swing it like a baseball bat. That's what I do. So I was like trying on the driving range, trying to hit this ball, and I was missing, and then he videoed me for about 3 minutes, just laughing his head off, and that was I was finished.
Well, that was lovely. So yes, you have another question for John, Kurt.
Yeah, I do. I mean, why did you write the book now? Why didn't you do it 10 years ago? And what gave you the discipline and the oomph to write this book?
I didn't. Well, I guess I didn't write it 10 years ago because I hadn't thought of doing it.
That's a very good answer.
Really good answer.
Very profound.
But I do remember the moment when I thought of writing it down as a book and drawing this analogy between golf and the Christian walk. One of your viewers asked about early on, does the triune God get a mention? It's all about the triune God. It's more gospel than golf, I think. But I do remember we were playing a round of golf, and Jason and Phil were there. So Phil's the guy of the pink ensemble, and Jason was whacking the ball off the tee in all directions. And when we give someone a free shot, we call it a grace shot. It's a Christian version of the mulligan. I don't know how many people watching this will be golfers, but golfers call that the mulligan. It's just a free shot, which means you don't score it. It's as if it never happened, which is a lovely illustration of grace, isn't it? We call it a grace shot. And Jason had 3 or 4 grace shots because things were not going too well. And then he hit a beautiful shot, and Phil hit a beautiful shot too. And so both of them were wandering down the fairway, and they both hit good shots into the green, except Phil's shot hits a twig or a stone or something, and it leaps into a bunker. And Phil, in his way, shouts, "Grace abounds, but there is no justice." And I thought that was a great little illustration, which you could use to describe God's grace towards us. And that's when I thought I could do something with the idea of analogy to golf. And I didn't really think about a book first. I was thinking more about sermon illustrations, actually. If you talk to people at my church, I'm always talking about golf. Golf or football. England beat Germany 2-0 today. Sorry, I've got to get that in. Golf or football. Yes. And I can see their eyes glaze over. Here he goes again, another golf illustration. I think there's so many illustrations that you can draw, and it's great for golfers. So the idea of writing this book, which primarily is to encourage Christian men to keep on keeping on, especially Christian men of my age, because I've just retired, and it's very easy when you retire to think I'm retiring from all things, as it were, and it's time to hang up my work and hang up my service in the Christian sphere as well. And I think that would be a huge mistake. I think men of my age have got a lot to offer the church and the kingdom of God. So it really primarily is a book to encourage Christian men to keep on keeping on in their Christian walk.
Yeah. And while I have you online right now, how can we get hold of your book?
Okay, well, it says at the bottom there, gospelinggolf.co, but it's really gospelinggolf.com. So you can go onto my website, which is gospelinggolf, all one word, .com, and you can order the book from there. It's also available, of course, on all other standard book-selling online sites, but you pay less for it on my site. I've got to say. That's the first time I've ever tried to sell a product, but yes. gospelinggolf.com is the website. And if people, I've also the website itself is there for people to share their ideas. So it's set up as I call it banter. We're on the golf course. We're constantly bantering away. So I've asked for people to share their golfing anecdotes and their reflections on life, and I'll put that on the website so we can perhaps build a community of Christian golfers. And then who knows where that'll go. It's a journey we're on, and we'll see what God can do with it.
But let me ask you something, because I picked this up on the video that we showed, that, you know, if you're playing an average game and it's what, 2, 3, 4 hours, somewhere in that's a lot of time to spend with somebody. I know of no other sport where, say, a group of 4 men would have that kind of opportunity besides the pub. But if they were in the pub for 4 hours, I don't know if the conversation would go very well. But you know, if you're on the golf course, just with the friendships, the amount of fellowship you have, where else would you get that?
Well, church, perhaps.
Not for 4 hours.
No. People do not stay at church too long. We do coffee and tea and everything afterwards, and sometimes people linger a long time, but that is rare. We see people just rushing off, especially in the more conservative churches.
That's true. And I was going to go on to say church, perhaps, but I've found that certainly men talk much more easily when there's another reason other than just chat for being there. And that's what golf gives us. It gives us that the vehicle for conversation, really. And men do share, certainly the men that I know, they'll share on a golf course what they would never share in a sharing meeting. So yeah, it is. I think it is unique in that sense. The only other sport I can think of where you've got 4 hours just chatting to people would be cricket, but you probably don't understand cricket. But that's because that's because it always rains and you never get to play cricket. So all you can do is chat. But no, I think golf is unique in that, and I think that's why I love it so much. It is fellowship that we can share with one another, and you've got a wonderful vehicle for sharing with non-Christians too. And you can share things as you walk around the golf course, and build those relationships, build those gospel bridges over which you can hopefully, with God's help, share the gospel to an effect.
Right.
So,
Just a question. I think if you are a churchgoer, but you've never been you're not a very outgoing person, say. Or you haven't been trained in, how to actually share your story about your journey with Jesus or whatever. What would you say to people who are playing, well, say for golf, for instance? How do you take that first step? Because there's plenty other subjects. There's politics and all sorts of other things that you can steer away from actually talking about God, talking about Jesus, talking about what our responsibility is as human beings on this planet to live the best life. What would you say to that man who says, well, that's not really for me to talk about God on the golf course? What would you say?
I think we make a big mistake sometimes, that we kind of compartmentalize our lives. I'm talking about politics now. I'm going to have another compartment where I'm going to talk about God. God, Jesus, is walking with us all the time. It's who we are. Just let it naturally happen. And around a golf course, there's so many things that bring God into the conversation. You're enjoying God's creation. Beautiful day playing on a golf course. What can be better than that? I was out on the golf course a week ago, and we had geese on the golf course, and there was a mother goose walking along, and behind her there was a straight line, absolutely straight line, like a military straight line, of her chicks just walking behind her. That's such a beautiful picture where you can start, talking about things in life that really matter. So I wouldn't force it. My advice would be, don't force it, but be willing to talk about it. And I do think we're too scared at times as well. If there's one thing, I've prayed over this book and I've thought about, what are my non-Christians golfing mates going to make of this when they read it? Are they going to think I'm completely barking mad when I'm talking about the Lord Jesus Christ and the resurrection? I think we think people are more anti than they perhaps are. Would be, I don't know how else to express that. And if it's true of us, if this Christian faith is true of us and Jesus means something to us, it's there in our life, isn't it? And it should just come out naturally as we're discussing things. And for me, life, fellowship, a game of golf, it kind of all blends into one. It's the Christian life. There isn't compartments. There isn't a time I'm going to talk about Jesus and a time I'm not. It's all there, and we walk that life together with him. And as we do that, we should share him too.
I like that.
Thank you, John. That's really encouraging. Just being ourselves and also having a story to tell. I mean, obviously, when we spend time with God, when we allow him to kind of interact with our lives and we see what he does and what a difference that makes. We have a testimony, we have a story, we have something to share with people. And I think that's a great encouragement. We have Kathleen from the South Coast writing in. Hi, Kathleen. And she says, when my husband had to go to the doctor asked him, did he exercise at all, like playing golf? No, said my husband. And as we came out of the room, my husband said to me, who wants to hit a little ball and walk miles to find it? And I'm sure the doctor heard him. Kathleen, that's hilarious. But I'm sure John, who's our guest this evening, would say, well, actually, it's not about the little white ball.
Well, England kicked a bigger ball and beat Germany. I just had to get that in.
So, what about they talk about the golf widows. Do you have anything to say about that? Because that's a terrible negative thing.
The golf widows?
Yes.
Well, I think it's certainly for retired gentlemen, it's less of a problem because I think the golf widows are quite grateful to get their men out from under their feet. Certainly, if my wife was a GP, so she was quite busy in her own life. But certainly some of my colleagues, they used to go to work every day, and now they're retired. The wives would say, "I'm glad he plays golf because it gets him out from under my feet." But I suppose if all things in life, you've got to get a balance. And clearly, my advice to anyone who's struggling with that, your relationship with your wife is far more important than your golf handicap. So there's no doubt where your priorities should lie, would be my answer, my serious answer to that question.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, we're kind of closing.
Oh, wow.
We're coming towards the end of the shows, but we've got a couple more things that we can discuss, Kurt. What about a father and his children? One of the things is that you don't want to be like splitting up the family by having, because for us, tennis, we all played tennis, and even my mum sometimes got on the court, but she loved to cook and create this wonderful event, and we had lots of friends, and all of us played. So just quickly before you leave, just how do we encourage children with the golf thing and to do things as a family?
How do we encourage our children to just get off their phones and do a sport, period? Anyway,
okay, we've got
your
a
last
minute.
words?
We have a minute.
You have less than a minute.
So, sorry, is that a question? Sorry, I'm not...
Yeah, how do you encourage families to get involved in sports?
It's a lovely thing to do. As I was talking about Tony and playing with his son and grandsons, how do we encourage that? It's just great fun. I don't know how else to say it. And that relationship with your children, it grows all the time. It develops as they mature. And to do things together is the best thing, isn't it? It's relationship.
Yeah.
Oh, John, thank you so much.
We've got to take our...
Thank you so much. Well, we're cutting you off now. You've just given us so many wonderful things to think about. Thank you so much. The book is available on his website, and that is at gospelinGolf.com, and you'll be able to get it straight from him there. So, John, we want to thank you so much for being with us. It's been a wonderful time. Our viewers also express their thanks for taking time to be with us. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye. Bye, John.
Bye-bye, John. Bye-bye.
Lovely, thank you.
So we are wrapping up.
That last question about getting families involved in sports, wow, that was my salvation as a youngster. Let's get off our phones, do some sports. We love you, and we will see you next week, and have a good week. Bye.